what the spiritual community gets wrong about plant medicines. Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Jess. On this channel, we explore all things mystical, shamanic, occult related, and having to do with spiritual sovereignty. As some of my viewers will know, I am a huge fan of plant medicines for myself and for some other people. And it's been a really pivotal part of my own spiritual evolution. It's not the whole thing, but it's been a vital component to my personal transformation. And I've also had the privilege and ceremony of witnessing plant medicines open the door to tremendous healings for others. With that said, the spiritual community has a really fascinating relationship with these medicines. And because of that, there are some misconceptions, both on the side that are for plant medicines and the side that are against. So I want to talk about a few of them today. The first belief is that you shouldn't need a plant medicine to have a spiritual experience. This tends to then degrade the spiritual components of plant medicine use because it's seen as a shortcut or like the lazy road into the mystical. And that can't be further from the truth. So you're right in that, are plant medicines needed for mystical experiences, for spiritual growth? Of course not. However, they can play for some people a key role in their spiritual development. Plant medicines, entheogens, are some of our oldest spiritual technologies as a species. We have evidence of the use of psychedelic mushrooms dating back tens of thousands of years, long before the advent of modern organized religion. It was a primary tool, one of many, that individuals used and communities used to commune with the divine. So there is this precedent within human history to engage with these allies. The next is that these substances have a spirit. Mushrooms have a spirit. Ayahuasca has a spirit. Iboga has a spirit. All of these plants, all of these substances have either a full entity attached to them or they embody a type of archetype, and it varies from medicine to medicine. And when you ingest something that has a spirit connected with it, it now becomes a dance between you and the spirit. It becomes a communion between you and that particular spirit ally. So it isn't just that you're taking in the plant, it's that you enter into a sacred space where you dance with that particular plant spirit. So it becomes a cooperative process. For some individuals, and I fell into this group, other spiritual modalities were not the right key for the lock. Personally, I started meditating when I was 12 years old. So I have a lifetime now of meditative practice. I still meditate daily. And I reached a point where it was like spinning my wheels. I'm no stranger to mantra work, to yoga, to devotional practices, to lucid dreaming practices. All of these things were great, but I reached a point in my life several years ago where all of those were falling short, and I needed something more powerful to break me out of myself for a little while. And that's where plant medicine became a beautiful conduit for my own spiritual evolution. For me, it was needed. There are people out there who honestly should never touch them. It's not the right medicine. It's not the tool. It's not the ally. It's not the friend that's needed for that particular person at that given time. The next misconception is that the states that are produced from entheogens are artificially induced states. Therefore, it's a lesser mystical experience than somebody who sits in deep meditation and has a spontaneous Kundalini awakening or reaches enlightenment or something like that. And first of all, there's nothing artificial about it except for the synthetics that some people might work with. But plant medicines specifically are not artificial. They are a part of the environment, just like we are a part of the environment. They are gateways into certain mystical experiences, just like meditation or breath work. are gateways into certain types of mystical experiences. Those experiences are not artificial, they're not superficial. For many individuals, they are the most profound and important moments in their life. There was a study that was done by Johns Hopkins. This was like a decade ago or something like that, and they were asking people to rate their psychedelic experience among the other major life experiences that they've had. And consistently, people marked psychedelic experiences as being as important and as profound as a birth in the family and as a death in the family. So this is a top tier spiritual experience for those that it's appropriate for in the right setting. And I just want to say a little something about the first 2 points, because I would be remiss not to address this within a larger historical framework. These narratives about it being artificial, superficial, shouldn't be needed. This, to put it bluntly, comes out of a colonizer mindset. If we look at when the Catholic Church, which ruled a large segment of the world for a long time, first came into contact with communities who were engaging with entheogens, they were quick to label those entheogens as being evil, barbaric, demonic, not true spirituality, because those entheogens were lumped into the greater spiritual milieu of the indigenous populations who were engaging with them. That narrative, that kind of puritanical narrative, never left the West or the global North. It just transmuted over time. It went from this is evil and an affront to God to this is going to wreck society. This was in the 60s, to this is going to wreck your brain. That was in the 80s, to the shadow of those discourses, which still appears today, and we see it in a slightly less harmful form in how it develops in spiritual communities. So a part of accepting that entheogens are a legitimate spiritual practice for some individuals, in doing that, we step out of a colonial mindset that we have inherited, unfortunately, culturally. Now, let's switch to the opposite side of the spectrum, because I hear this from some huge fans of plant medicine. And there is a subset within the plant medicine space who hold firmly the belief that the only real mystical experience, the only real profound mystical experience, is the one that comes from engaging with an entheogen. Any other mystical state you could achieve, whether through meditation, ritual, ecstatic song, or dance, are not going to touch or come close to that of the state that is elicited by an entheogen. And that is simply not true. There are a myriad of different types of mystical experiences people have that are equally as profound and life-altering as the consumption of plant medicine. And if we zoom out, the experiences that are created through plant medicine are only the tip of the iceberg, and we can't live there. All of the other spiritual practices that people can do are what we need to be doing on a daily basis, whether it's meditation, ritual, devotion, ecstatic work. All of these things support the ongoing transformation and growth that a plant medicine can start the process of. I believe it was Ram Dass who said something along the lines of, plant medicines, psychedelics can show you the top of the mountain, but you can't stay there. And I think this is true. They open doors, they show what's possible, but eventually you're going to come back down off that high. And then your responsibility is, how do you live that transformation in the mundane 3D world? How do you ground it? Just like any other mystical experience. So this isn't an either or, it's a yes and. The people who get swept up in this idea that plant medicine is like the only true religion, if you will, end up becoming dysregulated, ungrounded, and ultimately, from what I've witnessed within psychedelic circles, these individuals do not maintain that lifestyle or that belief long term. Eventually, they burn out from it, because the ingesting of plant medicines does take a toll. There is an energetic price that needs to be paid during the process. It's beautiful, you feel amazing the next day, but it's full on and it's a commitment. So to have that as the only cornerstone of a spiritual practice and that's it, is missing the larger picture. The next misconception that I see specifically on the pro plant medicine side is this belief that after sitting a few sessions with mushrooms or ayahuasca, that one is qualified to label themselves a shaman. This is simply not the case. If you look at shamanic traditions globally, even the ones that traditionally use plant medicine is only one small piece of the puzzle. Being given the title of shaman or curandera or paco or any other type of title that would be given within a traditional context includes a large number of other responsibilities, which I'll talk about more on another video. But unfortunately, people will have these profound experiences with the medicine. After the first few times, they will feel called to serve it to others. They will take on titles that they haven't been initiated for. And the problem with this is twofold. In the culturally sensitive arena, it dilutes what it means to be a shaman, and it could potentially do harm to traditional and indigenous communities. The second issue with it is it can harm people who will come to them to be guided through a medicine process. A few sessions with a plant medicine is not enough to guide, whether you call yourself a shaman or not. So, for example, when somebody learns to serve ayahuasca in the traditional way, they go down to the Amazon. They often live with a traditional ayahuasca community like the Shipibo in Peru. And it takes over a decade. The people I know who've done it, it's taken 15 years of training before they were told that they are ready now to serve this medicine. It is not just a matter of mixing the plants, brewing a tea, and serving it to people. The same is true with mushrooms, by the way, which we in the global north have a very different relationship with mushrooms than we do ayahuasca, which again, I might talk about in another video. Mushrooms tend to be a little bit more freewheeling, a little bit more playful, taken in non-spiritual context versus ayahuasca. And that's fine. Mushrooms are more forgiving than ayahuasca, but still, if one puts oneself in the position of power as a guide, as a facilitator, as a shaman, as a curandera, then they really need to know the ropes inside and out. You need to know, what does a bad trip look like? How do you navigate it? How do you create a safe spiritual container, a spiritually clean container? If some unwanted dense energies approach or trickster energies, how do you clear the space for an individual? It's really important to know how to do it because these things do happen. And that can't be learned through 1 or 2 or 5 medicine journeys. It develops over time through a long-term relationship with the medicine, that's one. And then it's ideal to apprentice with someone. If you're serving a very traditional medicine like ayahuasca or iboga, then it's really ideal to go sit at the feet of a traditional shaman or medicine worker within those communities, live in sacred reciprocity, and learn how to guide and facilitate within that context. Because remember, these medicines have spirits, they have intelligence. And then the last misconception for today is actually sits in the middle between both the people that are pro plant medicine and the people that might be more against plant medicine. And that is that spirituality has to be serious and heavy. The plant medicine journey has to be serious and heavy. People who go to a Grateful Dead tribute band show and eat a gram of mushrooms, well, that's not sacred. That's profane. That's dangerous. That's this, that's that. There's all of this narrative that is emerging out of the pro psychedelic spiritual community that simply is not true. A rock show can be equally as spiritually uplifting and mystical as a solemn high mass. It comes down to the individual, what they're comfortable with, and what the particular medicine permits. A heavier medicine, something like ayahuasca, it's probably not going to be ideal to go to a rock show, but I don't judge. You do you. It's between you and the spirit of the medicine. Even within a serious ritual container, play at times is really important. Singing, dancing, playing with tools and comfort objects, engaging in art, laughing, joking. These things are uplifting to the soul, and they can be so much more healing and more profound than having to sludge through the darkness every single medicine journey. So people who want to engage with these substances in a way that's playful, because it's cathartic for them, because it's uplifting, it's spiritually nourishing for them, that is a beautiful reason to and way to engage with these substances. So that's it for today. Please help the channel grow, like, follow, click all the buttons, and I will see you on the next video.